Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Christmas story, specifically focusing on the Virgin Mary. You know, we've got some really fascinating source material here that I'm really excited to kind of unpack with you and see what we can discover.
Sounds good.
So we're going to be exploring, the historical and cultural context of her life. We'll dive into the theological significance of her role and hopefully uncover some fresh perspectives
Right.
on faith and choice.
One of the things that I think is so often overlooked is the weight of social norms and expectations
Right.
that Mary faced as a young woman in Galilee.
Yeah.
I mean, we tend to, romanticize the Christmas story.
Sure.
But to understand the reality of her situation really adds a whole new dimension.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, our sources tell us that Mary was betrothed to Joseph.
Right.
Now, I know we've all heard that term, but it wasn't like a casual engagement,
Right.
like we think of today.
No, not at all.
Can you give us a little more insight into what that actually meant back then?
Betrothal was a legally binding commitment,
Wow.
almost as serious as marriage itself.
Really?
To break a betrothal was a huge deal,
Wow.
often requiring legal proceedings.
Oh, wow.
And carried significant social consequences, especially for women.
Wow, that puts things in a whole new perspective.
Yes.
So imagine being in Mary's shoes.
Yeah.
You're a young woman. You're bound by these strict societal rules.
Yeah.
And then, bam, an angel appears.
Talk about a life-altering moment.
Right.
And then the message the angel delivers
Yeah.
is even more mind-blowing. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High.
It's incredible. This wasn't just some vague prophecy.
No.
This was a direct, personal message.
Right.
With life-altering implications.
Absolutely.
Not just for Mary, but for the entire world.
The source points out that this message would have been radical on multiple levels.
Okay.
Biologically, of course, the idea of a virgin birth was unheard of.
Right.
But it also challenged the prevailing theological and social norms of the time.
What kind of implications would this have had on Mary's life, especially given the strictness of the betrothal agreement?
Just imagine the rumors, the accusations, the potential for public shame and ostracism.
Right.
An unwed pregnancy in that culture could lead to legal repercussions, even stoning in some extreme cases.
Oh, wow.
Mary was risking everything by accepting this divine mission.
It really highlights the magnitude of her choice, and yet her response is this incredible blend of humility and unwavering faith. She says, I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled.
That one statement speaks volumes about her character.
Yeah.
She doesn't question, doesn't argue, doesn't try to negotiate.
Right.
She simply surrenders to God's will.
That's where the concept of fiat comes in, right? It's Latin for let it be done.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful theme, not just in the Christmas story, but in our own lives as well.
It is. Fiat is more than just acceptance. It's an active embrace of God's will.
Yeah.
Even when it's difficult or doesn't make sense logically.
Right.
It requires a deep level of trust and surrender.
And that makes me wonder why Mary. Our sources point out that she was likely a very ordinary young woman. There were probably wealthier, more connected, or even more pious women in Galilee. Why choose her?
That's a question that has fascinated theologians for centuries.
Right.
One perspective the source highlights is that God often chooses the humble and the overlooked to accomplish extraordinary things.
It's almost like God is saying, look, true greatness isn't about status or outward appearances.
Yeah.
It's about the willingness to say yes to my plan.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Mary's story challenges us to rethink our own assumptions about what qualifies someone for greatness.
Right.
Are we limiting God by focusing on outward qualifications rather than the potential he sees within each of us?
That's a really good point. Okay, so another aspect that our sources delve into is this emphasis on Mary's virginity being a key factor in her selection. I know this can be a sensitive topic, so let's navigate this carefully.
You're right. It's a topic that requires sensitivity, but the source isn't just focusing on the physical aspect.
Right.
It's using Mary's virginity to symbolize purity in a broader sense.
Okay.
Moral integrity, spiritual devotion, a heart set apart for God's purposes.
So it's about making choices that align with our values and ultimately with God's plan for us, even when those choices go against the grain of societal norms.
Exactly. The source draws a parallel to the story of Joseph resisting Potiphar's wife in Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
He faced an incredibly tempting situation, but ultimately chose to honor God and stay true to his values.
And it's interesting because Joseph's story, although from a completely different time period, echoes that same theme of resisting temptation and choosing integrity even when it's difficult.
Absolutely. It's a timeless message, really. Both Mary and Joseph faced enormous pressure to compromise, but they ultimately chose to stay true to their convictions.
These stories demonstrate the profound impact of moral choices, not just in those specific situations, but throughout history and in our own lives today. They remind us that we have the power to choose what is right, even when it's hard.
And that's where faith comes in. The source emphasizes that genuine faith isn't just about intellectual assent or following a set of rules.
Right.
It's about trusting in God's goodness and his plan for our lives, even when we don't fully understand it.
So it's about surrendering to something bigger than ourselves, acknowledging that we don't have all the answers, and being open to a journey of faith even when it's messy and doesn't always make sense.
It's about trusting in God's love and guidance, even in the face of uncertainty.
That leads us to another point that the source brings up, the story of a singer who openly admitted struggling with some fundamental Christian beliefs.
Yeah.
It's not every day that you hear someone in the public eye talk about their faith struggles so honestly.
It's refreshing, isn't it? And I think it speaks to the fact that faith isn't some static, unwavering thing. It's a journey, and it's okay to have doubts and questions along the way.
For sure. And it makes me think, why is Mary's story so enduring, so powerful?
Well,
Why does it continue to resonate with people across cultures and generations? What's the secret ingredient here?
that's a great question. And I think part of the answer lies in the fact that her story speaks to something deep within the human spirit, a longing for meaning, for purpose, for a connection to something greater than ourselves.
And it's a reminder that God often chooses unexpected vessels to accomplish extraordinary things.
Exactly. Mary's story challenges us to rethink our assumptions about who God can use and how he works in the world. It's a powerful reminder that with God, all things are possible.
And that brings us to another fascinating aspect that the source explores the significance of mothers. It asks us to consider the crucial role that mothers play in shaping their children, especially in those formative years.
Absolutely. The source challenges us to imagine what it would have been like if Jesus had been raised in a home filled with negativity or dysfunction.
Right.
It underscores the profound impact that a mother's love, guidance, and nurturing can have on a child's development.
So it's not just about the biological act of giving birth, but the ongoing investment and commitment that a mother makes in her child's life.
Precisely. And that's why Mary's selection becomes even more significant. God wasn't just looking for a surrogate. He was looking for a mother who could nurture and shape the character of his son, the one who would ultimately change the world.
That makes perfect sense, and it reminds us that God sees beyond outward appearances and social status. He's looking for hearts that are willing to be used by him, regardless of background or circumstance.
Exactly. And Mary's story is a powerful reminder that God often chooses to work through ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things.
Okay, so we've talked about the societal pressures, Mary's faith, and the significance of her role as a mother. But our sources also delve into the importance of understanding the historical context surrounding the Christmas story.
It's true. To truly grasp the significance of Mary's story, we need to step back in time and immerse ourselves in the world she lived in.
So let's take a journey back to first century Galilee. What was life like for a young woman like Mary? What kind of challenges and expectations did she face?
Life in first century Galilee was vastly different from the world we know today.
Right.
It was a patriarchal society where women had very limited rights and freedoms.
Oh, wow.
Their lives were largely defined by their roles as wives and mothers, and their social standing was deeply intertwined with their family's reputation and honor.
Wow, that paints a starkly different picture from the idyllic manger scenes we often associate with Christmas. It was a world where social norms and expectations could be incredibly restrictive, especially for women.
Exactly. And that's what makes Mary's courage and willingness to say yes to God's plan even more remarkable. She was stepping into a situation that could have brought shame and disgrace upon her family, potentially even putting her own life at risk.
So in many ways, her yes was an act of defiance, a bold declaration of faith in the face of overwhelming societal pressure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was a radical act of obedience, rooted in a deep trust that God's plan would ultimately prevail, even if it meant challenging the status quo.
So as we continue our deep dive, we need to keep this historical backdrop in mind because it adds a whole new layer of meaning to Mary's story. It helps us to appreciate the enormity of her choice and the transformative power of her yes.
It's true. By understanding the challenges and constraints she faced, we can better appreciate the depth of her faith and the magnitude of her sacrifice.
It's like peeling back the layers of a historical masterpiece, revealing the intricate details and the hidden stories that make the artwork even more captivating.
Exactly. And as we continue to explore the source material, we'll uncover even more fascinating insights into the life and legacy of this remarkable woman who played such a pivotal role in the story of our faith.
It's like a detective story, piecing together clues from history, theology, and culture to gain a deeper understanding of Mary's journey and her enduring impact on the world.
And just like a good detective story, there are unexpected twists and turns, profound revelations, and ultimately a deeper understanding of the human heart and the power of faith.
All right, well, stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dig even deeper into Mary's story and uncover more about the mysteries and miracles surrounding the Christmas story.
I'm looking forward to it.
So grab your favorite beverage, maybe some Christmas cookies, and we'll be back in a jiffy.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we've been painting this picture of Mary's world,
Yeah.
first century Galilee, a place where societal expectations could be incredibly stifling, especially for women.
Right.
Makes you wonder, how did Mary navigate those pressures, especially after receiving such a radical message from the angel?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Our sources suggest that even within those constraints, women still had ways of expressing their agency.
Okay.
And influencing their communities.
Right.
They played crucial roles in the family life, religious observance, and even economic activities.
So even though they might not have had the same legal or political rights as men,
Right.
women were still active participants in shaping their society.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Mary's story, in many ways, embodies that dynamic.
Right.
She wasn't just a passive recipient of God's will. She made a conscious, deliberate choice to say yes.
Yeah.
To a path that defied all conventions.
And that choice, that fiat, wasn't just about Mary's personal destiny. It had cosmic implications. Our sources really emphasize that this wasn't just about bringing a baby into the world.
Right.
This was about the incarnation.
Yes.
The Son of God taking on human flesh.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it. The creator of the universe humbling himself to become one of us.
Wow.
And Mary, this seemingly ordinary young woman, played a pivotal role in that cosmic drama.
It challenges us to rethink our own notions of power and influence, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not always about titles or positions. Sometimes the most profound impact comes from acts of quiet obedience and radical surrender.
That's a powerful insight. And it connects to another intriguing point that the source material raises.
Yeah.
The idea that Jesus' humanity was just as important as his divinity.
Okay.
It asks us to consider the implications of him growing up in a loving, nurturing environment, shaped by Mary's care and guidance.
That's a really interesting angle. We often focus on the miraculous aspects of Jesus' birth, but it's easy to forget that he was also fully human, experiencing all the joys and sorrows, the challenges and triumphs of childhood and adolescence.
Exactly. And Mary, as his mother, played a vital role in shaping that human experience.
Yeah.
Our sources emphasize that her selection wasn't arbitrary. God chose her not only for her physical purity, but also for her spiritual maturity, her capacity for compassion, and her unwavering faith.
It makes you wonder what Jesus' life might have been like if he hadn't had Mary's influence.
Yeah.
Especially given the societal pressures and expectations of that time.
It's a thought-provoking question.
Right.
It highlights the profound impact that parents, especially mothers, have on their children's development.
Right.
And it underscores the significance of Mary's role in shaping the character and destiny of the one who would ultimately change the world.
This makes me think about that quote from our source material. Everyone comes into this world to live, but Jesus came to die.
Right.
It's a stark reminder of the purpose behind the incarnation.
It is. And it raises profound questions about the nature of sacrifice.
Yeah.
The meaning of redemption and the depth of God's love for humanity. Jesus' willingness to embrace suffering and death for our sake challenges us to rethink our own priorities and values.
He was saying, I'm not here to be served, but to serve. It's such a radical concept, especially in a world that often glorifies power and self-promotion.
Absolutely. And the source material draws a really interesting parallel between Jesus' humility and the story of a military general who asked a pastor to stand at the entrance of the church every Sunday in full uniform and salute those entering.
What a powerful image. It completely flips the script on our usual notions of authority and leadership.
Exactly. The general wasn't asking for special treatment or recognition.
Right.
He was demonstrating a profound understanding of humility and service. It's about putting others first, recognizing their inherent dignity and worth,
Yeah.
regardless of their rank or status.
And that's precisely what Jesus did by coming to earth.
Yes.
He didn't come in power and glory demanding to be served.
Right.
He came as a vulnerable infant born into humble circumstances, ultimately embracing a life of service and sacrifice.
And the source material goes even further, drawing a parallel between Jesus' incarnation and the story of a military officer who voluntarily chose to live as an ordinary soldier for a time.
Oh, yes, I remember reading about that. It was a deliberate act of empathy.
Right.
A way for the officer to gain a deeper understanding of the experiences and challenges faced by those he would later command.
It's incredible. And it highlights a crucial aspect of Jesus' ministry.
Okay.
His willingness to fully identify with humanity, to experience the full spectrum of human emotions and challenges. He didn't just observe our struggles from afar, he immersed himself in them.
Right.
Walking alongside us every step of the way.
So it wasn't just about a physical birth.
No.
But about a deep relational connection.
Yeah.
Jesus chose to become one of us, to share in our joys and sorrows, to truly understand what it means to be human.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it brings us back to that concept of purity that our sources keep emphasizing.
Right.
It's not just about physical abstinence or following a set of rules. It's about a purity of heart, a single-minded devotion to God's will, a willingness to be used by him regardless of the cost.
And that's where Mary's story becomes so inspiring, so challenging. She embodies that purity of heart.
Yes.
That radical surrender to God's plan, even when it defies human logic and expectation.
Her yes wasn't given out of blind obedience, but out of a deep personal conviction.
She trusted God, even when she couldn't see the full picture, even when it meant facing unimaginable risks and challenges.
It makes me think about those moments in our own lives where we're faced with difficult choices.
Right.
Where the path ahead seems uncertain or even dangerous.
Yeah.
Mary's story encourages us to lean into that trust, to say yes to God's call, even when it feels impossible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that God often works in unexpected ways through seemingly ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things. It's a message of hope, of empowerment, and of the transformative power of faith.
As we've been unpacking all this source material about Mary, I keep coming back to this idea of believing the incredible, seeing the invisible.
Right.
It's like a thread that weaves through her entire story.
The beautiful way to describe it.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the essence of faith, doesn't it?
Right.
That willingness to trust in something beyond our comprehension, to embrace the mystery, even when we don't have all the answers.
It's like that moment when the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary. It would have been so easy to dismiss it all as a dream, a hallucination, anything but reality.
Right.
But Mary chose to believe. She chose to see the invisible hand of God at work in her life.
And that's where that concept of fiat becomes so powerful.
Right.
It's not just about passive acceptance. It's about an active embrace of God's will.
Right.
Even when it challenges our understanding, even when it seems impossible.
It reminds me of that quote we discussed earlier. For no word from God will ever fail.
Yes.
In a world filled with uncertainty and broken promises, that's a truth worth clinging to.
It is.
It's a reminder that God is faithful, that his plans are for our good, even when we can't see the full picture.
It's like a bedrock foundation we can stand on when everything else feels shaky.
Yeah.
And it's a theme that echoes throughout the Bible, from the stories of Abraham and Sarah to the prophets of old.
Right.
God's word is always true, always reliable, always pointing us toward his ultimate purpose.
And speaking of purpose, our sources really emphasize that Mary's yes wasn't just about her personal journey.
No, it wasn't.
It was about something much bigger, something that would impact all of humanity.
Yeah.
It was about making a way for the Son of God to enter the world, to bridge the gap between heaven and earth.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it.
I know.
This young woman from a humble background played a pivotal role in God's redemptive plan for the entire world.
Right.
It challenges us to rethink our own notions of significance and impact.
It's like that quote from Dr. Park Sang-yoon,
Yeah.
where he compares the vulnerability of a fetus to the humility of Jesus's birth.
It's a beautiful paradox.
It is.
The creator of the universe choosing to enter the world as a helpless infant born into humble circumstances.
Right.
It's a powerful testament to the upside-down nature of God's kingdom,
Yeah.
where true strength is found in humility and true greatness is measured by service.
And that brings us back to Mary's role as a mother.
Yeah.
Our sources really delve into the significance of her influence
Right.
in shaping Jesus's character and worldview.
It's an aspect that's often overlooked,
Yeah.
but it's crucial. We can't underestimate the impact that a mother's love, guidance, and nurturing have on a child's development.
Right.
And in Jesus' case, those formative years were instrumental in shaping the one who would become the Savior of the world.
Makes you wonder what the world would be like today if Jesus hadn't had Mary's influence.
Right.
What if he had been raised in a harsh and neglectful environment? It highlights the profound responsibility and privilege that comes with parenthood.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it challenges us to create environments where children can thrive, where they can experience the love and acceptance they need to reach their full potential.
Right.
It's a reminder that every child is a precious gift, carrying within them the image of God.
Right.
And the potential to change the world.
And that connects back to that theme of purity.
Yeah.
That our sources keep emphasizing. It's not just about outward conformity to a set of rules.
No.
It's about a purity of heart, a single-minded devotion to God's will, a willingness to be used by him, regardless of the cost.
And that's where Mary's story becomes such a powerful example for us.
Right.
She embodies that purity of heart, that radical surrender to God's plan.
Right.
Even when it defied all expectations.
Yeah.
Even when it meant facing unimaginable risks and challenges.
So as we wrap up this incredible deep dive into Mary's story, I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
If God could work through someone as seemingly ordinary as Mary, what might he be able to accomplish through you?
That's a great question.
What dreams or visions has he placed in your heart that seem impossible, too big? Or too scary to pursue?
Maybe, just maybe, this is the year you step out in faith and say, let it be done. Just like Mary. You might be surprised at what God can do through a simple yes.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of the Christmas story. May Mary's example inspire you to embrace the mystery of faith, to trust in God's unfailing promises, and to say yes to the incredible adventure he has planned for your life. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.